Chapter 16. Universal Oneness. Now must the simplest, but the greatest of all laws of the universe be written down. Everything that is of everything else that is. Nothing is of itself alone. All created things are indissolubly united. This is the law of the entire substance of divine mind. This is the law of the souls of things. This is the law of love. It is the law of the oneness of the universe. All that is one. There are not two independently separate things in the entire universe. Individuality is non-existent. Individuality is but an appearance of separability and divisibility in a universe which is non-separable and non-divisible. No one can say I alone am I. If one should say, I am I, he must say also to all men and all created things, I am thou, and thou art also I. The oneness of the universe is the sublimely simple one spiritual substance of divine mind. The one substance of mind is a living substance of the one living thinking being of which all things in this universe are a part, and to which they are indissolubly united. Light is that which makes of the one substance a living substance. Light is the life principle of mind. Light is the creating force of the universe. Light is all that is. Light is the living God. God is manifested in light. Light is the Holy Spirit. God, Father, Mother, Nature, Man, the oak, the rolling hills and mountain chains, the pounding sea and the sands of the sea, the babbling brook, the red apple hanging on the tree, the autumn haze, the storm, the stars in the heavens, the blade of grass and the kindly dew in the opening rose. All creating things are dependent upon light to hold them together in the appearance of individually separate things. As light is the substance of all things, and all things are dependent on light, all things are therefore interdependent. All are continuously interchanging by reproduction throughout the universe in continuity. No one created thing has time, nor place, nor position and idea. The idea of all creating things is universal. It is omnipresent as idea throughout the entirety of mind, but the counterpart of idea in all created things is sequential in time and place. The counterpart of idea is the reproduced idea. The reproduced idea is a part of the basic idea. This is a universe of reproduction. Production and reproduction of the idea of thinking mind is the sole result of thinking, and the sole reason for thinking. Idea and reproduction of idea are universal in sequence as states of motion are universal in sequence. Idea and reproduction of idea are multiplied as appearances in motion in opposition of which the pulsations of thinking mind are the cause. There is no other cause. There is no other motion. Each idea and each reproduced counterpart of idea has but the appearance of time and place and position from which it does not appear to depart. Still is it of all the universe a part. The rose blooming in my garden is of Arcturus a part as it is of you and me. The universe sways to the swaying of the rose in my garden. Every particle of matter in this universe has its own magnetic pole through which it is connected with the magnetic pole of each other particle of matter in the universe, and through which each particle is affected by the ever-changing condition of every other particle in the universe. This is a universe of equilibrium in motion, the continuity of which could not be maintained except through the interdependence of all apparently separated units. Everything that is of everything else that is. Nothing is of itself alone. All created things are indissolubly united. All is God and God is all. God is light, light is all. Creation is the sublime idea of the sublime being. The sublime is always simple. With creation, simplicity seems to end, and complexity to begin. Complexity belongs to creating things. Man's outer mind is a heavy and complex mind. It knows not the sublimity of simplicity. The inner mind of man is attuned to the ecstatic meter of divine thinking. The inner mind of man knows the sublimity of deific simplicity. The inner mind of man knows light. Everything that is of everything else that is. Nothing is of itself alone. The perfume of the rose is part of the rose, and it is also a part of man, and of the winds, and of the garden wall. The perfume of the rose is light, As the rose is light, and so also is man, and the winds, and the garden wall. All that is light. Nothing is of itself alone. He who knows this greatest of all laws knows love. Love is a realization of the oneness of the universe. Love is the ecstasy of inspired thinking. God's thinking is ecstatic thinking. God is love. Until man knows from within his inner mind this law of the oneness of all things, it has no meaning for him. When man knows this law in his heart, he will have no limitations. When man knows this law so that its reaction within the soul of man is that of ecstatic, inspired contemplation, he will then begin to know the meaning of love. Unlimited power will then be his. His thinking will then be true thinking. All power is in true thinking. Thinking true may be likened unto a violin string sounded by the great master. 10,000 other strings tuned to the same pitch would sing in unison, unplayed upon. 10,000 other strings not so attuned would not know the ecstasy. They would be as though they were not. Inspired thinking is thinking in tune with divinity. Inspired thinking is thinking in exact pitch with the high octaves of divine thinking. The rhythm of light in the high octaves of light is the measure of true pitch and true thinking. True thinking of the inner mind makes true thinking of the outer mind. The outer mind thinks not in ecstatic measure. As a man thinks in his inner mind, so is he. The inner mind within all men and within all things is divine mind. The inner mind of man is tuned to the higher speeds of ecstatic thinking. Man may know the ecstasy of his own divine thinking if he will but tune his thinking to the high speeds or ecstatic meter of divine mind, which is within all men and all things. When man will so attune his thinking, then will he think in light. The inner mind of man alone can think in light. Inner thinking is ecstatic thinking. The outer mind of man cannot know light. The outer mind cannot know ecstasy. When man thinks in light, he will then know the perfection of divine idea. He will be a universal genius. Imperfection of idea cannot exist. The entire idea of thinking mind is good. There is no evil. There is no imperfection. That which man calls the created universe is the idea of thinking mind. The idea of mind is perfect, as mind in itself is perfect. Perfection of idea is truth. Imperfection of idea is electromagnetically impossible in this universe of equilibrium, as we shall see in later chapters of this book. Thinking true in light will give to man all power. He will have no limitations except those that are universal. With his feet on the electrodes of the universe, and his eyes in the high heavens, impossibilities of yesterday will be simple achievements of today. With this knowledge from within, man can have dominion over all nature and all things. Man can have dominion over his own body, and command it to health, and to beauty, and to comeliness. With a realization of this law in his heart, he will love and be loved of all men and all creating things, and he will know all things. All knowledge will come to man when he knows this law in his heart. All knowledge exists. Thinking man has all knowledge. Inspired man knows the law of love in his heart with the oneness of the universe. All knowledge is existent in the universe, and is the inheritance of thinking man from divine mind, God and Father of man and of all creating things. This inheritance of all knowing awaits every man to use as and when he desires that knowledge. Chapter 17. Omnipresence. Man's concept of God as omnipresent, or universally present, is an inconsistent concept, for it does not include man or nature in that concept as God, or as part of God. Man has been so trained to look for God outside the realms of nature as an incomprehensible, substanceless God, separate and apart from himself and from that which he knows as the physical universe, that it has become a tradition of his thinking, a fixed habit of his thinking. It may be a shock, therefore, to the outer mind of man to find a comprehensible God, of which he himself and all phenomena of nature are one. If this discovery shocks man's earthbound mind, then he must learn to readjust his thinking, for there is no other God than mind, and there is no other mind than the one universal mind, nor is there any other purpose for mind than the purpose of thinking. Man cannot conceive any other purpose for mind than that of thinking. nor is there any other product of thinking than idea. Creation is but an idea of thinking mind. The divine concept, materialized into this universe of matter, is a stupendous idea of mind, but it varies not one bit in principle from the simplest idea of man. Nor does it vary in universal mechanics from the dynamic principles employed by man for the materialization of his ideas. God is mind. Man is mind. All idea of God or man is but the product of thinking mind, registered in matter as form of idea. All idea is an illusion of mind, and visible only to mind as an illusion. Idea is held in form by mind for countless periodic intervals of evolution and dissolution. All thinking is universal thinking, immortal thinking. There is no mortal thinking. All idea of mind is perfect. Imperfection of mind cannot exist. Separation of mind into parts is impossible, therefore there are not two minds or two substances. The one substance of mind is light. Light is universal. Man is light and man is universal. That which is universal is omnipresent. Man is, therefore, omnipresent. All matter is omnipresent. The universe has no extension, continuity, space nor time. The oneness of the universe allows no exceptions, no mistakes, no error in its all-inclusiveness. Nothing is omitted from the entirety of mind. There are no separable parts to mind. No apparent part of mind has locality or position. All matter is universally present. All matter is light. Mind is light. Mind is the universe. Mind is all. 1. Chapter 18. Omnipotence. Omnipotence means all the power that exists. The omnipotence of the universe is limited in its expression by the limited power of the universal constant of energy to accumulate potential. The dynamic energy born of the action and reaction of universal thinking is the beginning of the activity of that which man calls electricity and magnetism, through which the universal constant of energy functions in the creation of separate appearances in matter by periodic changes of dimension. It is the beginning of apparent division of indivisible things into their apparent opposites. It is the beginning of sex. Sex begins when the opposites of light begin. It is the beginning of that which man knows as light and of the colors of light. It is the beginning of life. Life begins when light begins. It is the beginning of sound. Sound begins when light begins. It is the beginning of the generative concentration of light into that state which man calls heat, and its radiation into that which man calls cold. It is the beginning of integration and disintegration of light energy into the appearance and disappearance of that which man calls matter. It is the beginning of the crystallization of light units into that which man calls solids of matter. It is the beginning of integration and disintegration of light energy into the appearance and disappearance of that which man calls mass. It is the beginning of the electromagnetic opposition of the two forces which accumulate and dissipate the universal constant of energy into the periodicities of gravitation, attraction, cohesion, radiation, and repulsion of evolving and devolving mass. It is the beginning of the appearance of form. It is the beginning of the combination of form into the appearance of elements of matter, and of compounds of matter into that which man calls growth. It is the beginning of apparent transformation of the infinitely simple into the infinitely complex. It is the beginning of the interrelationship of matter, which man calls the chemistry of matter. It is the beginning of force and the motion of force and the inertia of motion. It is the beginning of time. Time begins with the impulses of universal thinking. It is the beginning of that universal rhythmic swing of the cosmic pendulum toward the apparent intent of unequilibrium, which is the cause of all creating things. It is the beginning of the illusion of separateness into the appearance of many things. There are no separate things. There is but the one thing. Nothing is of itself alone. It is the beginning of the souls of creating things and of the expression in matter of that which man calls life. The whole of creation is contained in the desire of universal mind to express idea, form, and rhythm in accord with immutable law in endless sequence through endless ages. Beyond this, there is no more. All mind is universal, and all mind has all power. The mind of man is universal mind. Man has all power. All power is universally present throughout the entirety of this dimensionless universe. All matter and all creating things are the images of thinking mind. Thinking mind is light, and light is universal. That which is universal is not separable from itself. Omnipotence is therefore universal even to the last corpuscle of the most insignificant atom. All matter is omnipotent. The universe of matter is breathing its energy in tune with the one breathing, pulsing, living being. Call it what you will, whether it be God or mind or the universal one. The in-breathing, out-breathing impulses of the living, thinking God mind is in absolute equilibrium throughout the universe. They are also simultaneous, but alternately preponderant. Exhalation proceeds in a lesser degree during inhalation, and inhalation continues, but in a lesser degree when exhalation is in preponderance. Also, all motion is simultaneous in its opposition. The opposing motions are merely alternately preponderant. All motion is oscillatory because of this sequence of preponderance in its opposition, of which much will be written in its proper place. No atom, no man nor creating thing can take all power from the universal one, or increase or decrease it, or be independent of it in whole or in part. All power is the thinking power of mind. All the universe is mind, and all the universe is thinking in unison. Mind is that universal one thing which man calls God. Mind is the universe. Mind is all. 1. Chapter 19. Omniscience. Within the thinking substance of universal mind is all knowledge. The entire substance of mind is knowledge. Knowledge is universal. Man's concept of all knowledge and all intelligence is a wrong concept. To man, knowledge is quantitatively limitless and infinitely complex. Man conceives the boundaries of knowledge and intelligence to be far beyond his comprehension. This is not a true concept. The knowledge and intelligence of universal mind are limited and simple. Knowledge is the perception of dimensionless existence, nothing more. Knowledge is an attribute of substance. It belongs to existence and the reality of existence. Knowledge might be likened unto the alphabet. Within the alphabet is all knowledge, but until it is put into words and phrases, the alphabet is devoid of idea. Intelligence is an understanding of the reality of existence as it is registered in the illusion of existence. Intelligence belongs to motion and not to substance. It belongs to the appearance of existence and to the unreality of the illusions of existence. Knowledge is passive, inert. It belongs to the equilibrium of unchanging causes. Intelligence might be likened unto the putting together of the alphabet of knowledge into words and phrases of infinite variety of ideas. If the universal one had not a creative thinking mind, he would possess all knowledge but would be without intelligence. Intelligence is the act of thinking creatively, or in other words, the act of putting together the illusions of idea into the forms of those illusions. Intelligence is active, opposing. It belongs to the opposed motion of changing effects. Changing effects cannot be known, they can only be comprehended. All knowledge of the illusion of existence is limited to the perception of causes of that illusion. Causes are unchanging. Causes are existent. Knowledge is limited to that which is existent. Effects are non-existent. They but appear to exist. They are but idea in transit. All idea is transitory. The idea of thinking mind is always in motion and, therefore, constantly changing. Solids are as changing as the sunset sky. Their difference of motion is but relative. Therefore, man cannot acquire knowledge from changing effects. He can but acquire a comprehension of its complexities. Man can have no knowledge of the sunset sky, for it is but an effect. Man can have knowledge of the cause of a sunset sky, and its effect he can comprehend. Knowledge is simple as cause is simple. Comprehension may be ever so complex. That which man calls knowledge is based upon observed causes and effects of complex facts of matter. There are no unconditioned facts of matter in a universe of motion. There are but appearances of facts. Man concedes that all our knowledge must ultimately repose on conditions, that are unproved and unprovable. Facts of form and matter are unprovable in a world of space, time, and motion. Matter as form and motion is but an ever-changing effect of an unchanging substance. Effects of matter are manifested in form. Effects are fleeting. They are ever-changing. Form is fleeting. It is ever-changing. Effects of causes are facts only in appearance. Appearances of this moment are not the same the next moment. The facts of appearances disprove themselves in the proving. All facts of form in matter are as the sunset sky. They are but fleeting effects. Causes of the appearance of existence are the only unconditioned facts. In a universe of motion, things are not what they seem, and there is nothing permanent but change. All form is constantly in transit between appearance and disappearance. Transition is not existence. It is but an effect of motion upon a substance which alone is existent. The ripples on the water are an effect upon the substance of water. They have no existence in themselves. Without the substance of water, they could not have appeared. Having appeared as the idea of ripples, they will disappear into the substance of water. That which periodically appears in transit throughout the 10-octave range of idea will also periodically disappear. That which appears must disappear, but also must it reappear in accordance with the immutable law that no state of motion ever ends. The divine concept is eternally repetitive in the reproduction of idea into form, and its dissolution back again into the memory of form. All idea is periodic in its repetitiveness of form, and of the memory of form. The divine concept, in its entirety, is a stupendous but comprehensible effect of a very simple cause. All effects of this creating universe can be comprehended when all causes are known. The limitations of all thinking are within the laws of motion and the effects of motion. Man can conceive nothing beyond the effects of motion and its cause. No phenomena of matter can be new phenomena of matter. Nothing is or will be which has not always been. All phenomena of matter have finite limitations. All complexities of matter are but effects of light in its orderly and limited variance of motion. The forms or images of idea are limited even in their variability and complexity to the limitations of the 10-octave range of thinking. Omniscience does not mean unlimited knowledge. It means all the knowledge that there is. Complexity of idea does not constitute new knowledge. Quantity and complexity of fleeting effects of unknown causes do not add to knowledge or to intelligence. Knowledge cannot be added to or subtracted from. Knowledge cannot transcend knowledge. Mere possession of knowledge or storing of ideas is not indicative of intelligence. A man may be an encyclopedia of knowledge, but still lack the dynamic intelligence necessary to use it by giving it expression as an idea. The acquisition of knowledge by man may be likened unto the counting of grains of sand, a lifetime of futile counting, and the beach is still uncounted, while 10 times 10 million beaches await his useless counting. Men's lives are spent forever counting unnumbered grains of sand. Men's lives are spent studying complex, incomprehensible effects of unknown causes. A study of the stars is more ponderous than the counting of grains of sand, but it is of no more import. Knowledge invites the conception of ideas in infinite variety, the complexities of which are apparently existent through the act of thinking. It is as though the alphabet desired its letters arranged in an infinite variety of ideas. The attribute of desire in knowledge is the cause of the dynamic activity of intelligence. Complexity of idea in forms of matter is only an appearance registered in low octaves of accumulated high octaves. To man, an appearance is that which comes within the range of his perception. When an appearance disappears, it has only gone beyond his range of perception. Appearance within the range of man's perception does not mean new existence. Disappearance beyond the range of man's perception does not mean cessation of existence. The cloud which disappears beyond the hill does not cease to be a cloud because of its disappearance. Vapor which disappears from man's sense of vision does not cease to be water. It can again reappear to the vision of man as water. Light which disappears into an octave higher than that at which man can perceive it does not cease to be existent as light. The thinking of mind is within the limitations of the knowledge of mind. The thinking of mind is limited to the cognizance of universal being. The limitations of knowledge are within knowledge itself. Beyond the existence of mind, there is no more. Mechanics and mathematics, ideals and ideas, science and art, solids of matter, and the effects of motion are all complex effects of perfect thinking. That which man calls spirit is not extraneous to matter. Matter and spirit are one. Spirit could not create a new substance extraneous to itself. One substance cannot become another substance. Mind is the only existent substance. Nothing is existent that is not spiritual, as existence is limited to thinking, and thinking is limited to 10 octaves. Man's concept of an infinite spiritual existence is a mistaken one. Mind, being all that exists, is limited to its own 10-octave range of thinking and is also confined to the act of thinking. It has no other purpose nor any other possible activity. That which is limited cannot be infinite, but it can be eternal. Spiritual existence is finite. It is a limited but eternal existence. If divine mind were an infinite mind, it could not be comprehensible to man, but its simple limitations make it easily comprehensible. If thinking is the cause of all effect, and thinking is limited in range, then are the effects of that cause limited in range. Heat is an effect of thinking which has its limitations. Motion, volume, weight, mass, sex, sound, color, and form, all these are effects which have their limitations. These effects are comprehensible. Comprehension is therefore limited to the range of possible effects. All intelligence does not therefore mean unlimited comprehension. It means all the intelligence that there is. Finite limitations in the expression of mind and idea might be likened unto the limitation of the painter to the colors on his palette. The painter has infinite variation within the color range of his palette in the expression of the idea of the image-making faculty of his mind. Within these limitations, his complexities of variation are without end, but beyond them he cannot go. He is limited by his color range. The color spectrum is his palette, and it has its limitations. The master painter is thus limited by the range of his spectrum, but within these definite limitations he has infinite possibilities for the expression of the ideas of the image-making faculty of his thinking mind. Limitations that are definite cannot be infinite. Divine existence is contained within the limitations of the range of divine thinking. Beyond this range, divine mind cannot perceive or think. The illusions or appearances, which man mistakes as existence, are but reappearances of old illusions. Reappearance is repetitiveness. The orderliness of created things is due to the invariability of cyclic periodicity in all effects of thinking. The pitch and tone and measure and meter of true thinking are due to the absolute rhythm of the repeating periodicities of thinking. The very dependability of universal mind, reflected in nature's inexorable laws, is due to universal limitations. God has set his own immutable laws in orderly, repeating periodicities of thinking. He himself is limited by them. He himself is bound to the observance of them. God cannot, never has, and never shall change his own immutable laws. Upon this fact is based the very dependability of the universe. Man's belief that God sets aside his own laws to perform miracles is a primitive concept of superstitious man. Superstition belongs to primitive man who is but learning how to think from within. When primitive man first catches gleams of the divinity, within him he is then rising above the thinking of the animal which he has been. Upon these faint gleams, he builds his primitive concepts based on fear of that which is superior to himself. To primitive man, modern man owes his concepts of a cruel God of supernatural power. These wrong concepts have become traditions of man's mind and habits of his thinking. Modern man inherits the habits of the unbalanced thinking of primitive man. Orderly thinking is perfect equilibrium. Against perfect equilibrium, nothing imperfect can prevail. Variation of the measure of true thinking would throw the rhythm of orderly thinking out of tune, and the universe could not be. To think in light is to think only perfection, for perfection is all that is written there. Mind is perfect. There is no evil, and perfection, or evil, is non-existent. Man's concept of evil is a wrong concept. Evil is as impossible as unequilibrium is impossible. The reader will remember that all thinking is an oscillation between two equal and opposite actions and reactions. He will remember that the union of any two exactly equal and opposite actions and reactions makes one. Man has control over his actions, but he has no control over the reactions to those actions. The appearance of evil is merely potential out of place and suspended there for the time. Like the apple on the tree, gravitation will eventually restore it to its proper place in equalized potential. From this inevitable return to the stability of conquering truth, there is no escape. The apple, as accumulated potential suspended out of place, will seek its own potential by falling toward higher pressures when the stem weakens by disintegration. Again, the decaying apple, disintegrating into gases of lower potential, will seek the place of lower potential by rising into lower pressures. Just so with evil. It is but an action that must eventually meet its reaction. That action which man calls wrong thinking is simultaneously written on the soul as a positive charge and is balanced by its opposite and equal negative reaction. Thus, the equilibrium of the universe remains constant, and man has recorded his own thinking, which he may correct at will, but correct it he must. Concerning the soul, man is ever concerned regarding his soul and its habitation after death. Man need have no concern. Man's soul is but the memory of the evolving idea of man. Out of the soul, the body is again born. The soul is but the record of man's thinking. The evolving idea of man cannot forever be held in suspense in inertia. The soul of a dead man is but the record of a man asleep for a while, awaiting the renewal of his body. The first part of sleep is but a centrifugal, decentrative reaction to a centripetal concentrative period of action. It is the expanding, dissipative, non-creative impulse of thinking, just as wakefulness is the contracting, generative, creative impulse. It is the period of preponderantly exothermal, electronegative discharge when the body degenerates in preponderance to its generation. Later, during sleep, the centripetal concentrative action begins to accumulate until it becomes sufficiently preponderant to cause the state of what is known as wakefulness. In the same way, during the first part of the day, the contracting generative impulse is in preponderance, but later fatigue shows that the expanding, non-creative impulse of thinking is increasing until it in turn becomes predominant and causes another period of sleep. And so the pendulum swings. As in all other phenomena of motion, sleep and wakefulness are simultaneous in the expression of their opposition, but preponderantly one or the other in sequence. Just so with life and death. From the moment of birth, we begin to die. Generation of that which man knows as life merely predominates until that which he knows as death takes its turn in orderly sequence. Death is just a longer sleep than the daily sleep. The difference is in the duration of the sleep. Concerning reincarnation, death is a life period of sleep for total bodily regeneration, just as the daily sleep is for partial bodily regeneration. Regeneration of the soul is reincarnation of the body. The chemistry of the soul of all ideas is registered in the master tones, known as the inert gases. The soul is the matrix of the body just as the master tones are the matrices of the elements. The inert master tones of an octave of the elements contain a complete and exact record of every effect of motion within its octave. The soul of man contains a complete and exact record of every action and reaction of thinking man. The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on, nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line. Nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. Creation is just a swing of the cosmic pendulum, between sleep and sleep, between awakening and awakening, and one follows the other as the night follows the day, and the day again follows the night. While sleeping for a night man does not cease to be, nor does he fear to sleep, for he knows that sleep is beautiful and he will awaken at the dawn of a new day. Man fears to die, for he knows not what the dark sleep of death will bring. He knows not that death is but a longer and more beautiful sleep from which he will awaken with a newly regenerated body to begin once more his periodicity of growth at the dawn of another new day of life. Man fears the hobgoblins of primitive man's concept of punishment of the soul for the sins of the body. He fears the dark sleep of death with its terrors much as a child which has been frightened by ghost stories fears the dark with its same imaginary terrors. With new comprehension, man can eliminate the imaginary hobgoblins and fears from his declining years and go to the sleep of his disappearance as form. In peace, in disappearance, man does not cease to be. In his disappearing, the idea of man does not discontinue. As the day disappears only to reappear in its proper periodic interval, so must man reappear. All appearances and disappearances are periodic. Also are all reappearances periodic. Appearances and disappearances are but moving points in the cycle of mind. In this universe of motion, creating things do not pause at any point. There are no created things. There are but creating things ever integrating, ever moving, ever evolving in the integration and the assembling of the idea of themselves. No form of life has been created. It is creating. Nothing has been. All things are being. Evolving idea into form is a positive action requiring the creative intelligence of imagination. A man who only has great knowledge has a negative possession. Poor he is indeed. A man who has great imagination has a positive, dynamic possession. Rich he is, for knowledge is within him, and of a certainty he shall find it. Knowledge of existence is not acquired from without, it is recollected from within. When man learns new things, he is but recollecting old experiences of his thinking, thought by him before in higher octaves. Man is not deceived about the elusive, non-permanent quality of the evolving ideas of his own thinking. He knows that they will soon pass, and that he cannot hold their evolving forms in suspension, unchanging, for one instant. The relative scale of man's objective universe deceives him as to the illusion of his evolving idea. The universal mind thinks idea into form exactly as man thinks idea into form. The universal one cannot hold the evolving form of divine idea in suspension any more than man can. There is but one process of thinking, for there is but one mind. There are not two minds, nor two methods of thinking, nor are there two sets of laws governing thinking, nor are there two separate substances, nor two separate things, nor two separate beings in the universe. All thinking is universal thinking. All thinking things are thinking in unison. All are creating that which they are thinking. All thinking things are self-creating. All thinking things are creating all things. Man is his own creator. Man is the creator of all that is. This shall man know, when he shall think within in the higher octaves of light of his inner mind. When man shall know the language of the universal one of whom he is a part, then shall he know the voice of the universal one. The still small voice within universal man speaks to him in the language of light, in words of tones in the speed of light. Within the heart of thinking man, the silent voice has forever asked, Who am I? Since the beginning man cried aloud, Who am I? And the voice answered, Thou art I, the universal one, am thou whom thou art creating in my image. The voice within man, insatiable, asks forever, Who am I? And the still small voice answers, I am I whom I am creating. I am the universal I am all that is in thee. I am he that is one with me. I am the empire of I that am I. Since the beginning, the voice within man asks, Whence came I? And the voice forever answers, I am of the universal passion of creation. I came from God. I am of God. I am soul, record of idea. Where God is, I am. Where I am, there God is. Within man, the voice of long ages demands, What am I? And the familiar voice answers, I am of the body of God, born of his substance. God is mind. I am mind. God is truth. I am truth. God is love. I am love. God is life. I am life. God is light. I am light. God is power. I am power. What God is, I am. What He commands, I command. My purpose is His purpose. God lives in me. My inheritance is from God and of God. He gives all to me. He withholds nothing. The divinity of me is thine and mine. It is that which is recorded within the soul of me. It is the Holy Spirit within the sanctuary of me. I am an idea of thine. The body of me is the idea of the soul of me. It is mine and thine. I am the master sculptor. My body is the plastic clay. My soul is the mother mold of my body, the matrix for my regeneration. I am what I am. I shall be what I desire to be. What I am I have desired to be. I am the sum of my own desire. I am thou, creator of myself. Thou art I, creator of all. I am thou, creator of all, for thou hast made it known in my heart that I am not of myself alone. I am thou, and thou art I am of the farthermost star, and of the blade of grass in my dooryard. I am of my brother and of the mountain. The ecstasy of my thinking varies the spectra of 10 times 10 billion stars, and illumines the ether of endless space. Thy thinking has created all that is. My thinking is thy thinking. My thinking has created all that is. I am ecstatic man. I am man, self-creating. I am God, creator of man. I am father of myself. I am son of the living God. The ends of space are mine. I shall know no limitations that are not thy limitations. Within man, the still small voice asks from the beginning and ceaselessly, why am I? And the voice answers, I am an expression of the universal passion of creation. God created me that I should fulfill His purpose. God gave me desire to create and the power of creation. God dwells within me. I shall not deny the power within me which is God within me. I shall not close the ears of my soul to the whisperings of my soul, which makes me dwell on the mountaintop in ecstasy of inner thinking. The universal desire is expression of idea through the rhythm of thinking, in accord with the law, in endless sequence throughout endless space. Within man, the ever-questioning universal voice beseeches, whither am I bound? And the voice answers, God was my beginning, is my substance, and shall be my end. From the one I came, to the one I return. I but tarry by the way to do the will of the one. I am universal man, the image of my Creator. Ecstasy and exultation attend me, for I know that all that is within me. My dwelling place is in the high heavens, on the mountaintop, above the waters and the earth. I range the high heavens in ecstasy. My feet are wings. The ends of space are mine. I sing praises unto all the universe by the way. The hosts of heaven rejoice with me by the way. I have denied my unity. My universality I have not known. My dwelling place was the earth. I walked the earth heavily in chains. My earth-bound feet dragged heavily after me. I wearied of the long road. My back bent with the ache of its burden. I was lonely and the way dark. I shall not deny my oneness and live in the loneliness of the dark. I shall know my universality, and I shall dwell on the mountaintop in the light of inner thinking. Hope dwells in the light. Despair lurks in the dark. Life and growth are of the light. Death and destruction are of the dark. Memory, the acquisition of new knowledge by man, is but the rethinking or recollection of old knowledge. Learning is not acquisition, it is recognition of a truth through the act of recollection. Recollection is the act of transforming the potential energy of an idea stored in memory, in inertia, into the kinetic energy of active mind, which is the state of concentrative thinking. Recollection is a dynamic, concentrative action of mind. It is therefore electropositive and belongs to motion in opposition. It is the action of again giving form to the memory of an idea. Recollection differs from creation in this wise. The act of creating an idea into form by concentrative thinking is an initial action. The act of recollection is a regeneration or reproduction of that initial action, the reaction of which has been stored in memory. It is the resurrection of the soul of an idea into the body of it. It is the recreation of an idea into form for its further evolution. Memory is the storehouse of the idea of mind. Thinking mind taps that storehouse of memory in that activity of mind which man calls by many names, such as memory, instinct, intuition, and imagination. They are all one and the same. Their varying shades of meaning indicate only the differing manner in which old recollections of memory, recorded in millions of years of evolving ideas, manifest themselves. If man could but see that the thinking of all mind is the same, whether it be mind of God or mind of man, or bird, or beaver, or oak, or rose, he would have a truer concept of the universe. If he could see that there is but one mind, and that mind is thinking in the expression of but one idea, then he would begin to comprehend the divine conception. If he could but see that the one idea is the whole creating, evolving universe, the one great illusion of divine mind as a passing fancy is an illusion of man's mind, he would be getting closer to the fundamental truth. Then, if he could but see that the illusion of the one idea is but an illusion in form, the substance of which is mind, he would not then look to illusions as dependable realities and to the one reality as an undependable illusion. If he could go farther in his comprehension and realize that God and man and the oak and the atom are just one, and that all these are thinking out the divine idea, then would he be close to the door of the Holy of Holies. Perhaps it might assist thinking man toward the attainment of this concept by comparing the thinking human brain as an appearance to the thinking mind of the universe as an appearance. To man, the appearance of the universe is that of countless objects at limited distances from one another. He regards himself as one of those objects, an individual, alone, independent, free to think, act, and do as he desires. His very breathing he considers as his own, and his actions are, in his thinking, his alone. Let us look within the thinking brain and imagine one thinking individual male unit upon one planet of one atom of the brain seeing his universe as man sees his. The appearance of the universe to this unit would be exactly the same to him as man's universe is to man. The objects within his vision would be separated by relative distances. Vast spaces would intervene between him and the vast suns in his starry heavens. Their luminosity would, to him, be relatively the same, for the positive nucleus of every system is a light-giving sun, and their relative motion would be the same, for a trillion revolutions per second of a light unit would be just as relatively slow to him as a day is to man. Periodicity of evolution is as relative as the appearances it records. Is it not then just as reasonable for this diminutive thinking unit of man to think himself one in a vast universe as for man to do so? Would it not be just as difficult for him to realize that he is just one apparent unit of the whole as it is for man to do so? And as it is with this diminutive unit in his universe within man's brain, so it is with man in his objective universe. One is thinking man's thinking, functioning in the evolution of the idea of man, and he cannot do otherwise if he will. The other is thinking the universal idea, functioning in the evolution of the divine conception, and he cannot do otherwise if he will. Every in-breathing and out-breathing of either is the in-breathing and out-breathing of the living universal one. Every thought and every action are in accord with the universal pulsations of action and reaction of the process of thinking, and they cannot be otherwise. Instinct. Consider the manifestation known as instinct. The beaver builds his dam, a marvelous feat of engineering. Was he taught to do it? Would he not do it just the same, and just as perfectly, if his parents and all associates were killed and he matured alone? How does he do it? Instinct. One answers. The bee builds his marvelous cells, the spider his web, the barn swallow builds in barns, and the chimney swallow in chimneys. The robin flies south and north according to the season. Instinct makes them do it. They cannot do otherwise, says science. Just so, they cannot do otherwise, nor can any of us, or any creating thing do otherwise than that which it thinks and has thought for countless periods of reappearance. These acts are all acts of thinking mind. recollecting dynamically the idea of its evolution, which has been recorded as memory in motion and inertia during ages of building beaver dams, honeycombs, and spider webs, and during ages of migration, nest building, and other characteristics of the evolving manifestation of the divine concept as a whole. Imagination. Consider that manifestation of recollection known as imagination. The quality of imagination varies in accordance with the ability to recollect memory recorded in the soul, and with the ability to think in light. To think in light is to think in higher octaves of the inner subjective mind. To think in light is to disassociate the outer, objective mind from the inner, to blot it out as though that octave of integration had not yet been. The outer mind is concerned primarily with the continuance of the body as an appearance of existence, and is not at all concerned or interested in much else. The outer mind of man, or of the lion, the dog, or elephant is absolutely the same. Man differs from the animal only in his ability to think in higher octaves and bring back to his outer mind recollections of the perception of existence stored in motion and inertia in the memory of his universality. This perception of all knowledge suspended within motion and inertia inspires within man that which he thinks is new knowledge, and as he adds it to his thinking, he again writes it upon his soul. Man does not realize that what he considers a new idea brought into the appearance of existence is but old ideas stored within him projected upon the outer plane of his thinking. Inspiration. When man gives to other men the inspiration which has come to him, he is a divine messenger of the living God delivering to man his revelation from the Holy of Holies. The genius, the super-thinker with imagination, who brings beauty to the world, is inspired man thinking in light. The greater the imagination, the greater the perception of the reality of universal existence, hence, the greater the intelligence. The lesser the imagination, the greater the reality of the appearance of existence. The greater the imagination, the nearer to oneness and the farther from the animal. The inspired genius of great imagination has great intelligence. He is able to use his knowledge creatively. Those things which he desires to know, he may know. The humble poet, inspired by knowledge conveyed to him by contemplation of the orbs of night, may give to man a message of truth which will outlive long generations of the learned whose disproved facts have died in the proving. The prophets were super-thinking men of great genius. The prophets had knowledge of the causes of things and could foretell their effects. Comprehension of the effect of a cause is not prophecy. Out of knowledge of the beginnings of things is born the imaginings concerning future things. The weather forecast for tomorrow is not prophecy, it is an act of intelligence born of knowledge. Genius is the forerunner of civilization. Genius knows the ecstasy of the high heavens and the mountain top. Genius is the bridge between man and God, he who may cross it. Genius is locked within the soul of every man. He who wills may unlock its doors and know its ecstasy. Genius gives to man that which alone endures, which man has named art. No work of man can endure which is not born of inspiration and created in ecstasy. Genius gives to man idea, rhythm, and form, which are of the soul and beyond which, in the created universe, there is nothing. Genius knows no limitations within those which are universal. Genius knows love and truth in all their fullness. Genius translates the word of the universal one into the word of man for the soul of man. Those who attain the ecstasy of genius are ordained messengers of the universal one. Genius lifts man from the lowly stage of ferment. Man still is new. He is still but in ferment. Genius lifts brute man to gentle man. Genius gives to man the harmonies of universal rhythm without which all is discord. Genius gives to man knowledge which is of the soul. He who tunes his heart to the messages of genius purifies himself. No impurity can there be in his heart, for verily he then is in communion with the Holy One. The pure in heart know their universality. Man may know his oneness. He who listens to the translations of genius knows the word of creation. He knows the rhythm of the universal language of light speaking in his inner mind. Genius awaits him who listens. The messages of genius are for the inner mind alone. The outer mind comprehends them not. To him whose inner mind is quickened into ecstasy, God speaks from the trees of the forest, and he understands. To him the silent voice of nature speaks, with understanding, from the babbling brook and the pounding sea. He knows all things. To him universal mind unfolds truth from the light of the sun and the blue dome of the heavens. He has all knowledge. To him the rosy dawn and the golden autumn sing messages which are to him as an anointing from the Holy One. He knows no limitations. He who has not ears to hear crucifies genius. The penalty of genius is crucifixion. The reward of genius is immortality. Whom man crucifies does he glorify with immortality. 7 cities ward for Homer being dead, who living had no roof to shroud his head. Genius desires no reward. The glory of genius is humility. Genius knows not the taint of arrogance. Conclusion: man has all knowledge within himself. Inspiration will unlock the doors of all knowledge. All knowledge exists in its entirety in all the universe. All knowledge, being universal, exists in man. The universe is omniscient. The universe is indissolubly united. Omniscience is of the electron, the atom, the magnetic field of the atom, the molecule, the mountain, the man, the planet, the air, the water, the fire, the stars in the heavens, and the far reaches of space. The oneness of the universe allows no exceptions, no mistakes, no errors in its all-inclusiveness. Nothing is omitted from the entirety of universal mind. There is all knowledge in all matter. There is all intelligence in all matter. All matter is spirit. Spirit is God. God is universal. God is all. 1. End of the first book. Stay tuned for the beginning of Book 2. Peace, love, and many blessings.